Hi, and welcome back to Where There's a Will, There's a Way podcast with Coulter Legal. Today, I'm joined by special guest, Jay Burke from Burke Britain Financial Partners. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stefan. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you along. Now, Jay, for our listeners, can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself, both your personal life, which we've talked about at length, but it's very, very important, but also your professional life?
We have had a couple of conversations around our personal lives, Stefan, but for the listeners out there, I'm 45, father of five, I had to think then, father of five kids. I am one of the directors, owners at Burke Britain Financial Partners, financial planning business in Geelong West, also based out of Melbourne and Shepparton. I've been in and around the Geelong area for my whole life. Went to school as a public school boy, went to uni here at Deakin, and found my way into partnership with my father in his financial planning practice in 2002. So we've just gone 21 years. We had a celebration last year for our 21st anniversary, which was
phenomenal,
a nice achievement. But financial planning wasn't what I'd anticipated that I'd be doing. It's certainly something that's been very rewarding now, but it was serendipitous that I ended up finding my way into that industry for sure.
But it's obviously something you enjoy. You've grabbed it with both hands and run with it.
Yeah, well, I actually did a health science degree before getting into financial planning, and I think, as you and I have spoke about many times before, relationships are key in whatever business you're in. And I enjoy people, I enjoy conversation, and I enjoy relationships. So that's kind of held me in good stead in whatever I've done, and certainly been the case in financial planning.
Ah, fantastic. Well, part of the reason for this episode and for getting you on, Jay, is to talk a little bit about the overlap and the intersection between estate planning and financial planning, and where, you know, the sort of outcomes we see when we get advisors working together holistically. So what we'll dive into a little bit is about your role as a financial planner, advisor, and the ins and outs of that role, and then how that overlaps with estate planning in your work. So what do you love about being a financial planner?
Well, it's probably back to relationships. I mean, relationships is something that I think if you don't enjoy actually what you do, then you're going to struggle day to day. And having a business and being in an industry where I'm required to actually have strong relationships with people is a positive. I very much love that. And I mean, financial planning, a little bit like, or very much like your industry in sort of estate planning and law, it essentially is problem solving. I mean, Our job is as problem solvers to look at situations and find the best possible outcome. So if you can combine the challenges of having positive relationships whilst also doing some high-level problem solving, I think that's they're the two elements that I really enjoy the most.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is we talk in our team about, you know, we all say we like to work with people. You've got to really like to work with people.
Yeah, it's not just a cliche or something that's nice to say. You actually have to have good people skills.
Yeah,
and sure, you've got to balance that with technical knowledge and know-how. But if you combine all of those together, then ultimately you'll have success in your industry and also in the financial planning industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we know what you like. What are the biggest challenges of your role? And I guess your role's multifaceted. So you've got the role of running a business, but you've also got the role of being the trusted advisor. So what are the big challenges there?
Well, this almost could be a podcast in itself. But I think with the two hats that I wear as a director and owner of a small business, I suppose the pace of change has been one of the most significant things. The pace of change with technology, legislation, compliance, technical components of the markets. But it's a significant challenge, but it's also the thing that I enjoy the most.
Sure.
I mean, that challenge of actually being able to deal with that and stay ahead of the curve and being, I suppose, contemporary in a changing world. It's a little bit like what you're doing here with this podcast, and the great things that you're doing here at Coulter Legal is that you have to continue to innovate. You have to continue to be showing where you can actually add value. So that's probably from a business point of view. From a client point of view, it is, again, back to sort of problem solving. We have very, very many varied situations that we're presented with on a day-to-day basis. No two clients are the same.
Yes.
And clients will come to us with a different entry point. So the entry point could be that they've received an inheritance. They might be ready to retire. They may have be looking at a property purchase. They might have a business that they're about to acquire. So all of these see people entering at different points along their journey. But the positive thing is actually being able to take those unique situations and then find solutions that actually fit that client scenario. So love problem solving, love people, and they're the two things I think that in my role as a director and owner and my role as a certified financial planner that give me the most trouble, but also the most joy.
Yes,
they're challenging, but I love a challenge.
Yeah, and that pace of change. I mean, that's I feel like that's a constant. But do you feel like in your space and in just running a business that's accelerated in the last 5 years, or it's I certainly feel like through COVID and post-COVID we've hit this. It's been a huge acceleration in change and technology and even what employees expect, what clients expect. Have you noticed that change as well?
It feels almost exponential. I mean, I'd say experiencing change on a monthly basis, like the use of technology and AI in every industry, we're just seeing the overlap with technology more than ever. I think what that represents is two ways to look at it. You can either look at it with great optimism and opportunity, or you can sit on your hands and do nothing about it and be very quickly outpaced in the market. So a huge amount of change. It's coming very quickly. It certainly does feel like for a period of time, our industry in financial planning really didn't move a lot. There's probably a decade from 2000 to 2010. But I think that change has been positive, and the change has been away from it being a very transactional, product-centered industry to a relationship industry where the client is at the center point of the relationship, and we have to deliver value. We can't just expect that people come in for a transaction and leave and are happy. People expect more, and with technology, we have to deliver more.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I guess it aids in that delivery, but there's a huge time element in making sure you're across it and utilising it in the right way that's going to benefit the clients and your business.
Yeah, and being over the top of it. And as a sort of someone who leads a team, it's challenging to actually have the resources spread in the right places. And I think that's one of the challenges of any business is making sure that you've got the right people looking at the right things, ultimately for the client's betterment.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we bring it back to estate planning, what do you see your role with your clients to be in the estate planning process?
Yeah, again, we talked about going back sort of the early 2000s. I don't think the estate planning conversation, maybe 5% of conversations in the financial planning world had anything to do with estate planning. It's very much, again, a transactional world. Yep. And there wasn't much overview. There wasn't much view of client situation in the broader sense of seeing how interrelated each part of someone's financial and lifestyle circumstances was. And I think I've said many times on the podcast, and maybe we've had conversations about this in the past, that as a financial advisor, we're in kind of the ideal position to be able to have a helicopter view of someone's circumstance. Like we've literally got details of their marital status, their dependencies, their income, their tax position, their assets, their liabilities, and their insurances, their estate planning situation.
Yes.
So our role is, I think, negligent if we're not considering how changes to each of their individual elements of their circumstances go on to affect estate planning. And so when a client comes to us, we're always thinking, what are the things that we need to do? Who do we need to involve here? Do they have a solicitor already? Do they have a lawyer that's actually going to help them with their wills and powers of attorney and their estate planning? If not, that's kind of in our wheelhouse to make sure that does happen.
And is that a conversation that you're having with clients on an annual basis, or is it more, so is that part of the formula, or is it more that it's, as you're having discussions, you're raising it as you see the need, arise?
Yeah, it's both.
Yep.
You know, and it's definitely both. I mean, as I said earlier, people will come to us sometimes with a need, and that need might, at least in their eyes, have nothing to do with estate planning.
Yes.
And it's our job to actually look at where that might impact their succession arrangements or the movement of their assets or where the risk might be, and identify it for them and then point them in the right direction. From a review point of view with existing clients, it's part of our process. So part of our process is we're constantly revisiting clients' existing estate plans. We're constantly revisiting who those estate plans are with, so that we've got lines of communication with the other professionals. So it's both at entry point of clients coming to see us for the first time, and then on a regular review basis, and then anytime circumstances change. So one of the things we're very encouraging of our clients doing is, as they have changes to their circumstances, you want to know about it.
Yes.
I mean, the last thing you want to do is see a client 3 years after you've first seen them and find out that they've had a monumental amount of change and you haven't addressed their circumstances. So there's those three elements where you'll be reviewing their estate plans for sure.
And if I can add to that, we certainly see clients come to us after big decisions have been made and big investments have been made or big changes have occurred. And there was something in there that, had we known beforehand, would have been really simple to implement to save a whole lot of tax or to structure things for the long term rather than the short term. So, like you said, it's really about teaching your clients to come to you when there are those changes, or making sure that you're touching base with them often enough so that's part of the conversation each time.
That's probably been one of the other significant changes in your world and my world, and the overlap between the two is that the expectation now is that this is an education process. Like with the relationship comes the ability and the need to actually educate clients about what's important, rather than just saying, come in for a transaction, come in and get some insurance, or come in and make an investment, or come in and get your will prepared. No, we actually want to know what's going on in your world. And here are the triggers, here are the things that potentially are going to impact the existing estate plan we've got in place.
Yes.
And you should let us know.
Yeah.
I never like clients giving a surprise. I don't like surprises.
Fair enough. And so, all right, so you've flagged where some estate planning might be needed, or whether an update to an estate plan might be required, and you've potentially sent the clients back to their lawyer, or they've engaged a new lawyer to start the process. How often then, after that initial engagement or after that initial sort of flagging of the need, are you then also involved through that estate planning process?
You probably taught me this. It's a legal response, and it depends.
Yes, yeah, classic lawyers answer. I like it.
A classic. It really does depend. I think where the engagement has actually been made. I think one of the things we value the most, and I know that our clients value the most, is knowing that their lawyer and their financial advisor talk to each other.
Yes.
Right? And that potentially their lawyer and their financial advisor disagree on occasion. If we're disagreeing on occasion, or we've got a point of contention in a positive way, it means that there's overlap and overview of a client's circumstances, and clients value that greatly. So again, it depends. Wherever there's a significant change in circumstances, I'd be encouraging our advisors in our practice, and you're probably encouraging your lawyers in your practice to revisit how might this impact some of the other plans that a client's got in place. So you knowing, us having a mutual awareness of a client, you knowing that broadly the financial plans that we've got in place, you'll know the trigger point where you need to give me a call and say, hey, Jay, clients come in, they've had a change of their circumstances. I think it's probably worth us convening and chatting about it, or you giving the client a call. That's probably the biggest change in both of our industries of recent time, is that connectivity between other professionals. It didn't exist 10 years ago. Now it's what clients expect.
Absolutely. There's so much benefit to that collaborative process, and I think just part of it is that we, in our own professions, focus on slightly different things, and there's some overlap in that focus. But the elements of estate planning that I might focus on are going to be totally different to the elements of tax or the elements of, making different investment decisions and what that means in the short term and the long term that you'd be thinking about in your role. So by making sure we collaborate and we're working more holistically, I think it really means that our clients get the benefit of, having all of the issues covered rather than it being covered piecemeal and it, not working quite so smoothly together.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you would do it in here with your other lawyers, and we do it in our practice where the financial planners are looking at each other's work too, because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees when you're involved in a circumstance, a client circumstance, and being third party removed, you can see things that I wouldn't see. And I think as a financial advisor, I value that opinion, and there isn't. I'm not worried that you'll challenge me on something that maybe I've missed. I welcome it, and I know you're the same.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to jump back to that education piece you talked about. That has become a big part of our role as well. So it's not just about, we're not just filling in names and assets on a will. We're talking about what the impact of those things will have long term. We're talking about things that should be triggers for reviews in the future. We're talking about, this is not, a lot of people would like it to be a thing that they do once, they set and forget and they park it away and they never have to worry about it again. But really, the modern life, the modern family is so much more complex than it was, so much more involved, so much more fluid, it really needs to be updated and be like a living document, or their estate plan should be a living plan that is updated from year to year, like a strategic plan for a business, or you've got your 12-month plan, you've got your 3-year plan, and then you're constantly updating to make sure that is matching with changes in the market and it's matching with changes in your people. And so I part of that process from both our ends, it seems, is that we're educating about that, what we're doing for today in the short term, but also what we're looking out for in the future.
Yeah, I think the estate planning and legal industry, a little bit like the financial planning industry, has probably done a poor job historically of conveying that. I think that's the challenge, and that's one of the great things that I know that you're spending a lot of time and energy on, is making sure that we sort of change the landscape and not make estate planning something that people dread and think that. I know from personal experience, when my wife told her that we were updating our wills, it was a very emotional decision.
Absolutely.
Educating her about the importance of it and the benefits of having that in place, all of a sudden it takes on a different context, and you see how that it plays into having protection of your assets. I mean, we work hard to grow the assets that we've got. Why don't we protect them and make sure that we've got the right things in place to make sure it goes to the right people at the right time?
That's so true. Now, if we're talking about the overlap between financial planners and lawyers, and I'm going to throw accountants in there as well, do you think there's a sweet spot in terms of the time in the process or the type of client for that kind of collaboration? Or is it, again, it depends kind of answer, which I suspect it might be?
I'm going to cheat and say that it depends. I think that the collaboration, or the point is, when you've got that person right in front of you. I mean, part of our initial process when a client comes in is we're seeing whether or not they've got an estate plan in place, number one. So the sweet spot there is, as soon as we see it, we're going to make sure that a referral is made. At worst, we're pointing out to a client that there's a hole in their plan. And then, like I said earlier, making sure that there's collaboration all the way through. And I think that's probably the key for us, is making sure that that the lawyer knows when to flag a connection with the advisor knows when to flag a connection with the lawyer, and the client knows upon change of circumstances when they should be speaking to their advisor or their lawyer as well. So if we're all on board with when to engage one another, then we're not going to miss anything. We're not going to leave any gaps or holes in the plan that we've put in place.
Yeah, and I think the thing you touched on is it doesn't really matter who starts that process or who the client goes to first, as long as they make that first move of talking to one of those advisors, and the advisors are connected, or they know that there's a good relationship. They know where to go to for that next step, as long as, from the client's perspective, they've said, this is changing, or this is a plan we're thinking of, or this is what's happened. You go to any of those advisors, if they are connected and working well together, then that issue is going to be resolved, or the right plan will be put in place because there's that collaboration between those advisors. So, Jay, you've been in the game for a while. I think you've seen it all. Do you have any gems of advice for listeners who are considering engaging in financial planning or engaging in an estate planning process, or both? What is your gem of advice for them?
Yeah, and it's pretty simple, Stefan, to be honest. It is ultimately just to take some action and take some personal responsibility with your own circumstances. Again, it's cliched, but with things like estate planning, these things aren't a problem until they're a problem.
Yes.
So if you can be getting ahead of the curve and making sure that you're putting some plan in place that protects you and your family and your assets in the event of a worst case scenario, I think it's worth doing. I mean, it is something that we all put off. We probably defer, but if you can bring that forward and take some action rather than kicking the can down the road, that's my simple advice.
Right, love it. And it really is just, sometimes the hardest part is just getting started. Once you've found somebody, once you've engaged them, we're here, we're the professionals, and it's our role to make it easy and simple and straightforward and as pain-free as possible. So it's just really getting started that's the hardest part. And as you said, yesterday, today, like that's the best time. I really like that. And I implore our listeners to follow that advice. That's a great gem.
We're slowly demystifying the industry and giving people a bit of a peek under the hood. You shouldn't be scared. You shouldn't be shy. You should take the action, move forward, and sort your own planning out, whether it be financial planning or estate planning. The time is now.
Great, love it. Now we're just about out of time. So Jay, really, really appreciate you coming on board and helping demystify the world of estate planning and financial planning for us today. Now, I've invited you on board for your expertise, but also because you're a bit of an expert behind the mic anyway with your own podcast, the Finances podcast. Where can people follow you and follow the Burke Britain team if they need more after the end of this podcast?
Yeah, well, you've literally just returned the favour to me, Stefan, by having me on your podcast. I do appreciate it. The Finances podcast is on all of your streaming services, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you get your Spotify and your podcast from. We're at Burke Britain FP on all socials, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. You can Google us at Burke Britain Financial Partners and you can make a time to see one of our advisors if you like. So you'll find us if you Google us, and we're on LinkedIn and all other places. But thanks again for having me on, Stefan. And for those listeners out there that want to have a listen to your episode with me, I think it was number 58 of the Finances podcast. Get on and have a listen.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Jay. And thanks to our listeners for making their way through another episode of Where There's a Will, There's a Way podcast. Look out for future episodes very soon.